Okay, we are live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another unlocking. Today we have with us to do the Tomb Kings, Vince Ventrella, the Wizard of Warhammer, Cetra's baby daddy. Vince, thanks for coming on board again.
Absolutely. I'm happy to spend another lunch with you.
So last time we didn't really get a chance to go through the special characters. I'm wondering if maybe we'll be able to do that this time, but I guess the same format. One thing I do want to change, it hasn't kind of been working too well, is kind of trying to compare too much to 8th edition. I got to say, I'm done. I'm past that. I've moved on, man. I don't need to compare how good or bad things were compared to 8th edition. Let's just see how it would be usable in the game. I think we've all matured in some of our ideas of how the game is played, even though there's still some gray areas and still some people, debating things. So let's just talk about these units when we go through them and just see what I'd like to get some input from your perspective on how you'd apply them, how you deploy them, what situations you'd use them in. We'll go down that road. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I do that. I always make this mistake. So let's see if I can get this one right. Hold on a second here. And there's supposed to be, supposedly, a way where I can do this and keep it static, right?
Yeah, I can handle it. There you go. You just need to lock on you. There you go.
All right, so now how do I lock on me? Let's see.
I already did it.
All right. Good thing you're here.
I'm here to help.
Appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to pass through special characters. We're going to move right to the king of them all, the Tomb Kings.
May we, this is a pretty short one.
Okay.
Would you mind if we just did at least Cetra real quick? Cetra cannot be skipped.
I know you have a serious love for Cetra. So how could I possibly say no?
Sure. So I'll take Cetra if you don't mind. I'll grab him.
Absolutely.
All right. So Cetra obviously classically rides the Chariot of the Gods, and he still does here. Like most of the undead, he's got the standard sort of 10 bravery. His move is not exceptional for a mounted person, but it's also there you go. There we go. Okay. It's not exceptional, but it's not poor either. 10 inches is perfectly fine. I think he's really a classic example of like you've got to read beyond the numbers, right? I think when a lot of people look at these scrolls, then they tend to stop just at the numbers, right? And they go, oh, okay, well that is what that is. But Cetra's a great example of where like the numbers are okay when you look at them. I mean, he's certainly not bad. He'll put guys in the ground. 4 attacks on 3/3 with a big old -2 rend and 3 damage. He hits like an ogre tyrant or something, right? But it's in the special abilities that where he makes his money back. And specifically, that Crown of Nehekara must be one of the most powerful abilities on any character, right? Where he lets the other mummy heroes that are within 18 inches of him, in your hero phase, they can use their command abilities, even though they are not your general. Holy moly.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed at the 8 wounds. I think that for a special character, it probably should have been more. But let's go over some more of the details of these powers.
Yeah, I'm okay with it because he is in a chariot, not a whatever. He probably should have been 9 wounds to compensate for like his 6 plus the quote unquote 3 of the chariot, as they're sort of stacked. But whatever. And then obviously the Chariot of the Gods. So, if it charged, Cetra goes up to 6 attacks rather than 4, and you double your horsey kicks up to a shocking 16 horsey kicks. That's a lot of horsey kicks.
The horses are always the unsung heroes, even with the chariots.
Yeah, 16 horsey kicks. I mean, I don't care if they're 4 up, 5 up. That's a lot of horse. That's like a unit attacking, right? I mean, that's like he's hitting you with a unit of goblins by charging into you. I very much like his incantation of the Desert Wind. It actually is very Skaven-y. We talked about that last time. It's got the same sort of mechanic going for it, right? Where you roll, and he has this basic magic. Cetra's always had basic magic. He's not a full Lich Priest, but he's, not weak. So you roll, if you get a 1, he suffers a mortal wound. Otherwise, the chosen unit gets to double the distance. It can move. and gains the ability to fly for the duration of its next movement phase. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So let's see.
The
Let's go.
Scarab is just a basic ward save. The Curse is, of course, the standard Curse. He's just got the amped up version of it.
Well, let's talk about the ward save.
Yeah.
It may be standard, but that's very uncommon in Age of Sigmar. So the way it works is, just in case anybody's not familiar with it, because again, it's not like it was in 8th edition where probably half the game had a ward save, and a lot of characters did. You would take, it looks to me like you would take your normal armor saves, which could be mitigated very easily by Rends. Even though it's a 3-up, that's pretty good. So a really good Rend is -2. You're going to fail some 5s. But if some of those wounds are mortal, you're not going to be taking armor saves, in which case now you get a backup, which is the 5-up. And of course, that's not modified or anything like that because Rends just go through armor. That's not bad, especially when you only have eight wounds. A lot of times, things that do mortal wounds usually do more than one. So it's nice to have that kind of sticking power as a backup.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, you say it's rare, and that's true. It is rare when you look at the whole game. If you look at just a single army like the High Elves, it certainly gets scattered around a bit much. But
yeah, we'll be looking at that tonight.
Yeah, well,
with
so
Kieran.
there you go. So Kieran and you can talk about how there's way too many ward saves in the High Elves. But
Amen.
But beyond all that, and then of course Cetra's command ability, one of the supremely fun one, and he did say war, and the world did tremble. So yes, Cetra the Imperishable, the King of Kings. When he says we go to war, the nation goes to war. You know, you have to think like Cetra is the most powerful single leader, right? Because he commands, like Krofron's in the old world, he commanded a nation, certainly, and he could march the empire to war. But he had a lot of elector counts who could still do their own thing, and the troops were mortal and could be afraid and wouldn't march fast and might not want to go and right. But Cetra is the king of a massive nation where everyone is undead and bound to his will. And when he tells the other tomb princes and tomb kings we go to war, they go to war. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You get out there and you fight. And so this is one of the funny abilities where you have to hold out your hand and utter war in a supremely commanding tone. And if you do, all the death units in your army get +1 to hit. Death rattle units get an additional 1 to wound. And then finally, if Cetra's your general, if you kneel for any reason, you lose the game immediately because Cetra does not kneel.
I just wanted to know, you don't extend your hand and say war anyway in a game? I didn't even realize this mechanic existed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I do all the time. That's how I start all of my games.
All my games. Matter of fact, that's how I start dinner.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes.
I just point and say spaghetti. It's the same thing, though.
All right. So obviously, you love Cetra.
I do. I think he's great.
Yeah. This is the goodness is in the text. So at a glance, you're just going to see a wall of words. Read them. There's character here, and I think that since we're starting off with Cetra, and you're right. This is a fairly short army list, short series of War Scrolls. We could probably go through to the next one and talk a little bit about High Queen Khalida,
the most beautiful model as rated by me in last night's show. And that's all that counts. High Queen Khalida is really interesting in this whole army. So she's got the standard hero wound. She's not tougher like most of the Tomb Kings are. 8 bravery too. She's got a lower bravery than everybody else, which I find really strange.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Oh.
Yeah. But like in this case, the numbers don't lie. You look at her stuff, and she might not have any rend, but she just hits like a truck. Like the venom staff is just popping off rendless cannonballs, and on very good numbers too. 2 to hit, 3 to wound, 2 to hit. I don't know if there's other 2s to hit. There's probably a couple in the game, but that is an uncommon number on a hit roll. And D6 damage. I mean, she'll obviously put some people down. And she has her old always strikes first. Her thing was always that she's impossibly fast. And I love that if your opponent basically selects someone within 3 inches of her to pile in an attack, and Calidia hasn't went yet, she gets to instead immediately pile in an attack first, right?
Nice way to go and take a mechanic from the previous edition.
Yep.
And use it with the current edition mechanic. By the way, 2 up to hit base. You don't need a whole lot to make that a 1 up, which is an auto hit.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so, she's a stone's throw away from that. Man, and that's like a weakly thrown stone, like a small child throwing that stone. And then, sadly, her command ability is not as good as it used to be. It's okay. It's basically if she uses this ability, then you get +1 to hit by all skeletons in your army.
And that's not a joke either, because as we'll see
in the shooting phase.
In the shooting phase. Okay, so that's still not a small deal. We'll take a look at some of the abilities when we get to skeletons, but obviously with a dry army, a lot of these mechanics are synergistic with the skeletons, and they will stack. So we'll see how brutal that can get once you.
It's not bad. It's just not as good as the old world of her adding poison. I know we're not comparing. I'm just saying I missed the actual like poison thing.
Yeah, that was there were whole like army ideas built out of that one mechanic, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. It was certainly pretty scary. I've actually only seen it actually used once, and I saw a battle report with it as well. It's a step down, a little bit of a step down. But in the world of Age of Sigmar, I'm kind of surprised, at that, but that they didn't actually, go a little overboard with the special character.
Sure.
But they kept her grounded a little bit.
There you go.
Okay, let's go to the Tomb King himself. Now, I really like the Tomb King in terms of utility. I think he's obviously going to. I think he's definitely going to work again with the skeletons, combined with the skeleton special abilities. If you were to take more than just the Tomb King, take place, for instance, with Cetra, you're going to start adding some of these together and really get some interesting bonuses. The Tomb King is almost built to die. You obviously don't want him to perish too quickly. He's got to dish out some damage. But the Tomb King's curse, if he dies for any reason at all, whoever did it, gets that curse, which inflicts die 3 mortal wounds. But I'm curious. I wanted to ask you if you've run into a situation where it's possible. I'm not sure. I haven't covered all the PDFs and all the as I've said many a time on all the armies, and I'm still uncovering crazy things that can happen. Are there ways where you can damage your own unit? Because I'm curious if maybe you had 1 wound and you did it yourself. Is there some way that you might inflict that damage on one of your own units?
I think there's a couple friendly fire things in the game, but I can't think of what they are right at this moment. There's probably a couple still around. I don't know that there's anything within this war scroll, but I mean that like within Tomb King, so that doesn't matter. You could build a larger army, right?
Yeah, and plus you have these things like terrain and scenery and whatnot that can do it. Yeah. But I would be interested in finding out if that can pop up. So respectable stats: 6 wounds, 4 up save, which can be re-rolled with a shield. Pretty standard undead 10 bravery, but that my will be done allows for a skeleton unit. You pick only 1, which is kind of weak. I was actually surprised. I mean, the Tomb King, he's not, he's in many cases that would be your general in previous edition. In this case, you're only picking 1 unit to get that extra +1. I kind of think that was a little bit of a downgrade. Well, it is it's hit, run, and charge.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take. I am of the opinion this is one of the best generals I've read for just stock standard generals. Okay, and here's why. He's got everything I like. He might not be skewed in one way, but this guy does everything. 1 more wound than the average general. He's at 6 instead of 5. The Dynastic Blade, 4 attacks, 3/3, -1, D3. He's a solid hitter.
Yeah.
Always go with the Dynastic Blade. Forget that great weapon option exists. You don't want that because you got to have that shield. You stand that guy in cover, or you have a Mystic Shield put on him. Just move him to 3 up in any of the multitude of ways to do so, and this dude's going to bounce cannonballs, okay? Because he goes to a 5 up straight rerollable against a cannonball. I played a game. I had 3 cannonballs that I managed to save out of him, all right?
Nice.
So, I mean, that's good luck, but it's not that beyond the pale. Rerollable armor saves were the greatest thing in the world in the past edition. They are still the greatest thing in the world now.
Yeah.
If you can get them, get them. If you happen to be in cover and get a Mystic Shield, this guy is unkillable,
Yeah,
right?
I can see that.
Unless he's taking direct mortal wounds.
And
And that skeleton ability, his command ability, I love it because it makes Tomb, like this is the foot Tomb King,
right.
and he's meant to work with Tomb Guard, right? You put him with Tomb Guard, and they are going to butcher whoever they hit. And when we get to them in Tomb Guard, think about the one to hit, run, and charge when we get down to Tomb Guard.
Yeah.
Okay? It's such a swing, and everything is important.
Well, there is a lot of synergy, obviously, being in the death realm between this and units also in vampire counts. So you can mix and match here.
Yep.
I haven't looked yet to see if Graveguard are considered skeleton, but I'm betting that they will. So it will probably cover a multitude of units beyond just the dry units in the Tomb Kings.
Yep.
That's great. I mean, I when I first looked at it, I thought it was a +1 to hit, and I didn't see the run and charge. Now, those two actually make it a little bit better. I still would like to have seen it be, all units with an 18. I see so many of these command abilities that do that. But yeah, look, he's got a lot of all around good stuff.
Yeah, he's a very across the board. He plays good O, good D, good utility.
Got it. All right, let's take a look at the Chariot version.
Yes.
All right, so a couple extra wounds, obviously a lot more mobility. Still got that dynastic blade. I have to agree with you. I think that the combination of the attacks, the hit, the wound, and a little bit of rend, and if you do get some through, which you're more than likely to do with 4 attacks and a nice hit and wound, you're going to have die 3 damage. That's going to add up with any failed saves. Again, you have the same curse. Now you have a Chariot, so you're getting more attacks if you've charged. That's never going to be a bad thing. You have now more attacks with the Thundering Hooves, which are the unsung heroes of just about any unit that has them. And then let's see what these different command abilities are. I like that there's different flavor depending on how you take some of these exact same general types, or you don't even have to be this. By the way, this doesn't have to be a general. It's just like the idea of the general typically would be a Tomb King. You could make it one model in your skeleton archer group could be your general if you really want. It just says model. But as far as a top-notch hero, if a Tomb King in the Royal Chariot uses this ability, you can choose to reroll charge rolls for the model and all units of skeletal chariots from your army that are within 18 inches of him in your next charge phase. Now, if you are running a lot of chariots, and I know you do, Vince, and I know that there's at least one example. I want to hear what it is. I can't wait to hear it because Tom alluded to it when we had our hangout with going over Orcs and Goblins. I can see this being crushing. The ability to reroll those charges means you're going to get more often than not. You're going to get where you need to go. So give us some sage advice here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I have the best wisdom here. I had certainly multiple crazy chariot armies in 8th edition, including some that snuck the Coven Throne in from vampire counts and used that to cheat along with the Golden Crown of Nehekara, 2 things that that doesn't really exist anymore. But what I would say is, there's a lot, the ways to deploy this is obvious. You just want a lot of chariots, and you want them charging from all sides. Because it's everybody in 18 inches, it's a fantastic bubble, and all of them are going to have this attack or impact hit sort of mechanism to them. And when you get into at the end of this, there's actually a chariot formation, right? And when you put this guy with a lot of chariots and you build that chariot formation, you have to land those charges, and you will just blow people up on the charge. I mean, that's what it boils down to. It's so destructive.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I was actually building my vampire counts version of chariots with the corpse carts to try and have my own little a conversion that didn't look too Tomb Kingy. But that was getting a little out of control. A little. All the things I do are out of control. I take 3 kits to make 1 with all my friggin' conversions. So why should that be any different? But sure. I just wanted some token chariots, and this is the kind of thing that makes me think, okay, maybe I need to keep doing that. My insanity should have no limit.
There you go.
All right, Prince Apothis.
The Prince. Obviously, this is the cursed guy, right? He's cool. He can fly, so he's got the big 12-inch move. He has a nice ranged attack. which is actually, strong in the number of hits, not so great in the wound or rend or damage value, but whatever, that's fine. It throws a lot of spaghetti at the wall and hopes something sticks. He's okay, is what I would say. His Soul Reaper gives him, a bonus in melee against other heroes. And he does heal, which is nice. And he can he has the reserve trick just like he used to. Like, you can entomb him beneath the sands effectively, right?
Right.
I just have trouble thinking about this guy in an army. If you're playing under any kind of restrictive system where there's any kind of restriction on heroes, this guy would just not be at the top of my list.
All right. Okay, well.
He's not doing enough. I'd take another normal Tomb King.
Got it. Okay. Let's go on to the Tomb Herald then. Now, for anybody who remembers, an 8th edition Tomb Herald was pretty much like a bodyguard type. And he still is. And I think he still does his role very, very well in Age of Sigmar. So what we have here is we have a mechanic. Now, he could be taken on foot, but you can also take him on a steed. I would probably keep him on a steed. There's no disadvantage to doing so. You get a lot more mobility. And it doesn't change any of the other stats other than you get a 12-inch move and you get some extra attacks. But the key is you want to stay within range of a really key high value hero from your side. And if he's within 3 inches, he basically jumps in the way and can take that damage. So he'll take the wound or mortal wound in the place of your hero, but he takes it as a mortal wound. 5 wounds, not so bad. You're going to be able to take some pretty good wounds if you're talking about cannon fire or a lot of archers trying to snipe out some of your heroes. This is a real good way to extend the life of those heroes. I do also like the standard ability and the ability basically to, within 24 inches, any death rattle units, which I believe most of the dry units are going to be considered death rattle. If he plants his shield, which is a pretty common mechanic for the battle standard bear type units, you can basically return a unit that's been slain. And now what's nice is that it's not just one; it's every unit that lost a model within that range. So I like the Tomb Herald. I think it's a great companion to whatever your most important or most desired hero is, whether it's a caster or the Tomb King or a special character.
I agree. Okay, quick downside. In the old world, you could put him in a chariot. And he was my favorite guy to be riding along beside the Tomb King or Prince in a chariot. I miss that he can't be in a chariot anymore. But, I mean, whatever. He can just ride on his horsey alongside and still, use his rule. It just is kind of weird.
You can model him that way. Just put him on one of the smaller ovals.
I'll put him on one of the chariots. I'll put him on a horse on front of it, like that's pulling the chariot. He's riding up front, like Maverick style. But hey, the standard's amazing because it's model, right? It's not so like if you're just returning a single skeleton, who cares? But for the bigger stuff, returning up, the larger things or the higher value things, quote unquote, yes, that's amazing.
I know you would probably want to speak about the Casket of Souls, so let me do the Lich Priest, and you can get the juicy one that comes right after.
Sounds good.
Okay, Lich Priest. Your standard hero spellcaster. So I love the idea that a lot of the wizards have some options to dish out a little bit of damage, and it depends really which one, but they typically at least have one attack with a -1 rend and a die 3 damage, so they at least can get a lick in. They can get one in there, and if they get past your armor, -1 rend is not so bad. They still have the potential in hand-to-hand to do some damage. But the real importance of this particular character, and you can take him on foot or on a steed, is going to be the special abilities and the magic. So let's just take a look at the Hierophant Scroll. So once per game, Lich Priest attempts to unbind a spell he can read from his ancient scrolls. If he does, that unbinding attempt is automatically successful. So it's kind of like a Dispel Scroll. Not bad. Very few of those in the game. As a matter of fact, this is the first one I've seen. So I'm pretty
and also a callback to their previous book. So like in the first incarnation of Tomb Kings, they didn't actually have wizards. Lich Priests weren't real wizards. they cast everything from ancient scrolls. So you had like a number of scrolls, and they were one-use things, and then you couldn't cast that spell again. And so this is a nice callback to that.
And it's a nice way to give you a little bit of a step up in terms of magic defense. Okay, so the Righteous Smiting is really the bread and butter of this one, on top of the fact that if you, and I'm still standing by this, and I won't get it too deeply. If you take any units that imbue a summoning ability, of course, he's also going to be able to summon. Yeah, I went there. But Righteous Smiting is his specialty beyond that. And just to throw another more oil on the fire, if I took just the Lich Priest and nothing else, no other units, what am I summoning? Nothing. Everybody out there in the internet, you're summoning nothing. You got to take a unit that gives you that power. Okay, moving on. I know. I'm going to get a lot of venom, which will be appropriate for the Tomb Kings as a result for the few people who are looking at that in a different way. All right, so Righteous Smiting, getting back on track. As the verses of incantation are spoken, a fierce light emanates from the empty eye sockets of the Lich Priest warriors who move with unnatural speed and fury. So what you do is you have casting of 5, which I'm sure there's many ways to get that down to 4, so it's almost a gimme. And if you cast, you have Skeleton and Reanimate, so that's going to be a lot of units now. It's not going to be just your dry units. It probably is going to be other units like, give me an example of Reanimate units.
The Reanimates are like the, like your Ushabti and stuff like that, right? Your construct guys. What were previously like animated constructs.
Right. Great. So within 18 inches, all right, you can pick one, and until your next phase, all models in the unit are imbued with magical power, and each time they roll a 6, one of these models, it can immediately make 1 extra attack. Now, this is not huge. It's not incredibly powerful, but when you've got these units that have lots of bodies, which some of these units are going to have, especially skeleton units, you're going to roll those 6s. And those extra attacks are going to come into play, and we'll see that when we get to some of those units when we see the special abilities. Let's also remember this as a synergistic thing to add on.
Yeah, it's okay. It's I look at this and I'm like, I remember what Righteous Smiting was. You are a pale shadow, Righteous Smiting. True. I think this Lich Priest is basically an example of like they heard us say Scroll Caddy a million times in battle reports, and they were like, okay, fine, we'll make a real Scroll Caddy, and that's what this guy is. I can take him for the Dispel Scroll.
I haven't seen many of these. I haven't seen any of these actually, so I'm sure they're out there.
He's the one.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad he's in the Tomb King army. All right, buddy. You get it. The Casket of Souls. Tell us about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes, the Ark of the Covenant. Whatever. Everybody can see the numbers. This thing doesn't move very much. And if you're getting attacked in melee, what are you doing? So like, yeah, their fighters are actually kind of decent. But I don't even begin to care about that. Like, that's so irrelevant to this thing. It's all about this thing's special abilities, right? It's first of all, +1 to your casting for your Lich Priests within 18 inches. Huge deal. Mm-hmm. 1 to your casting rolls is such a massive swing, right, in the odds. It's just hilarious how effective that is. The Keeper Scrolls, basically that Keeper can attempt to unbind. I don't know how often that's going to come into play, because I don't know how often the enemy is going to be within 18 inches of him. This thing's fairly static. But if the wizard wanders into his bubble, whatever, you can attempt to you get another unbind attempt, which is not too bad. But obviously what we're all here for is the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, and that's Unleashed Souls. So I'll just read it straight out, even though I'm sure our viewers can read it, but I'll just read it straight through. In your hero phase, the Keeper of the Casket can unleash the tortured souls of the damned. If he does so, pick a visible enemy unit within 20 inches and roll a dice. On a 3 or more, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. It suffers D6 mortal wounds instead if its bravery is 4 or less. Then roll a die for each other enemy unit within 6 inches of the first unit. On a 5 or more, that unit is also attacked by the Vengeful Souls and suffers D3 mortal wounds or D6 if its bravery is 4 or less. This thing is fantastic. It's 3 up for the target unit and 5 up for everything else around it. I mean, boy, oh boy. God forbid anybody with a low bravery wander into the range of this thing. That is just going to be a bad day for them, for sure.
Yeah, it's not the range is not as far as it used to be, and that I think kind of helps rein in a little bit of the crazy, as I like to say. But it's still very vicious and very crazy. And if people are going to be closing with you, I like the idea that even though you only move a little bit, you can move these things now. All the war machines can,
Right.
but it's devastating, and it's got to be an auto take, especially for the Tomb Kings. You don't think I'm going to be taking it for my undead army, my combined list? I did before. I'm going to be doing it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now Skeleton Warriors. This is an example, like a few that I've already talked, and I haven't gone through the vampire counts, which is my mainstay, but this is one of those that I've used as an example of why I think a lot of comp efforts are overdone. And I mean, I don't like the comp in general, but I do understand the need for some comp. I don't want to get into a whole conversation about comp, but this unit among many are one of those where you want to have the option and the availability and flexibility to take larger unit sizes and not be penalized, because where this was garbage before, there certainly was a use for skeleton warriors. You had ways of making them more powerful, especially in the Tomb King's army, where you could actually take a huge unit with a higher weapon skill, with a character that did so. But in this case, it's a situation where they don't have a great to hit, they don't have a great to wound, they're only one wound. So if you put ceilings on, you're not going to be able to take a lot of these guys, and they really come to their own when you take large quantities of them. So the main mechanic I want to get to here is this, and that is that if you take units that are more than 20, you get an extra round of attacks. You get basically 2 attacks each, and if you have 30 or more, then you get 2 extra attacks, 3 attacks each. I have done this. I played a game with 40 skeletons, and that's 40 skeletons. I kept them in a block formation, and even just getting the 2 front rows is phenomenal. If you take these guys with spears, that's also absolutely insane. And you could also try to really be creative in the system, have different formations like V's or U formations or blocks, and have the front rank of your regular skeletons, your skeletons with regular ancient blades, and right behind them you can have a row of ancient spears that give you that extra inch so they can reach, and you can have even more. And both those units could be 40 plus. So don't inhibit these types of abilities with some crazy comp. Even if you're going to comp, try to allow the option for our mechanic for people to do this, because there's flavor here with the skeletons, where before, again, they were garbage type units. They were really they weren't overcosted or undercosted, but they were one of those core units that you kind of had to include in some capacity. Now, with a certain amount of volume, these can be pretty scary, and everything in Age of Sigmar is about throwing as many attacks as possible, because even the best saves on the most powerful monsters and characters are going to get failed, and you're going to be able to do wounds.
Yeah, agreed. I think the 2 things to note here for me are, we're going to see a repetitive thing, and we can talk about them here, but they're just going to repeat a bunch throughout the army. So their icon bearer automatically returns slain models, right, during your hero phase. So D6 skeletons stand back up. No more need to cast a spell. It just happens. And you're going to see that happen over and over again throughout the army. Tomb Kings have a wonderful ability to just keep standing back up. And then the Hornblower is the other thing you're going to see repeat a lot. And I think this is one of the best musician effects in the game. A unit that includes any Hornblowers can always move up to 6 inches when it charges, unless its charge roll is higher. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Ever had a 6-inch charge you failed? I have. You want to never do that again? Yeah, well, play Tomb Kings. Like, I mean, how crushing is it when you have a 6-inch charge and you fail it, right? I mean, we've done it a ton of times where you're like, all right, all I need is to roll a 6, or, right? Nope, not with the Tomb Kings. You're good to go. You always get a 6, bare mins. So if you close to within 6 inches of an enemy, you're in.
Yep.
Like, there's no question, you're in. They eliminate the guesswork.
Yeah, it gives them a much farther threat range, and you add in some of the synergies where they get a +1 to their charges, and that goes even further. Also, that servant death, if you're next to a death hero, or excuse me, not death, within 18 inches of a death hero, you're going to get a +1 to your hit rolls. So those 4+, or even for spearmen 5+, suddenly becomes pretty respectable when you combine that with that multiple attacks that you'll get for larger units and any other pluses you get from other special abilities. You could be looking at 2-ups, at least 3-ups with 3 attacks each for these guys. Even if not everybody is able to get in on the fight before you start piling in the horde, you're going to get a lot of rolls. You're going to get a lot of hits on target, and that is going to decimate everything. I mean, you can take out a bloodthirster in probably 2 turns with these guys, depending on how many you get. You even have the potential to do it in 1, because that's how many saves you could put on that one model.
Yeah, and yeah, it goes back to, if you remember why I said I like the Tomb King. Here's a great example. I mean, obviously, he's a death hero. You stand him next to them and use this ability, these guys hit on 2s.
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet.
That's not really, we don't have to push too far to get that combo. We've just got to have a hero and a guy, or any unit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so you got skeletal archers. Yep. Let's try this one.
Sure. Pretty standard stuff as they were before. Again, same undead bravery and all that. The bow's pretty decent range of 20 inches. The hit's the old standard Tomb King 5-up. I mean, they're a lot. They're basically the skeletons but shooty. I think the one thing I would note here as a call out is that their hornblower not only gives them the 6-inch charge thing, which is funny. I don't know why you charge with these guys most of the time. But more importantly, it gives them, you can shoot even if you run in the same turn. And the key there being, remember, you don't have to be running forward.
Good point. Thank you. Yes, tactics in Age of Sigmar.
Yes, I can run away and still shoot behind me at the enemy. That is a good thing, right? Like, you have a much better, these guys don't have a great move, but 4 plus a d6 means you can still lead somebody on a merry chase and pull them into where you want them for your other units to then surround them and cut off lanes of retreat and such.
Yeah, that really makes these guys so much more versatile, and of course synergies with was it Kalita that gave the +1 to shooting, or was it okay?
It's Kalita, yeah.
So, and plus they are a skeleton. No, they're considered a skeleton unit, so they would get pluses to hit from other special abilities of characters. Even though they're archers, they're still considered skeleton units.
Yep.
Because they have that individual skeleton keyword. Definitely a good one to take, and I'm glad I made 80 of them at the end of 8th edition when end times happen. All right. Well, I've only fielded that maybe twice, that many, but hey. and a bunch of them are on the line, like the four wide archer bases, which I'm going to have to cut up at some point. But for now, they'll die in droves, and I'll take them off from those first. Skeleton horsemen. Again, this is where just in general, cavalry have gotten a bit of a boost just in terms of staying power. Maybe not always in hitting power, but in staying power, because they have 2 wounds apiece. So where before skeleton horsemen were a question mark. You weren't sure necessarily if they were worth the points in 8th edition. Obviously, what are those? Here, if you want to have a cav-oriented army, if you didn't want to go crazy with chariots, skeleton horsemen are a pretty good option. I like the idea that they have the spears with an extra range, and you're going to need that with cav to be able to get closer in. Not all cavalry have that 2-inch range, which is a little unusual because a lot of times they have lances, so they don't always get that. Obviously you're getting the extra, attacks from the horses, but here 4-up's not so bad. But let's also remember, once again, they're skeletons. They have a skeleton specific keyword. All those other abilities for +1s or rerolls or anything like that, they all apply to this unit as well. So skeleton horsemen all those abilities will stack and really have an impact on the skeletal horsemen. I really like that. Of course, they also have the ability to restore, like you said, wounds from their icon. It's only die 3 for these. Which makes sense. It should be less because there's more wounds per. Let's see. They have the 6-inch charge minimum, which is nice. They add +1 to rolls for attacks and wound. when they charge. That's no small deal. So now we're looking at 3-ups without the enhancements of other heroes' special abilities. And they get a +1 to save. Now the saves are not that great. 6-up it starts, but if you get a shield now, you'll get +1 to save to 5-up. So again, they're not heavy armored cavalry, but I think there's still a place for these guys. If you ignore them, they're going to hurt you.
Yeah, I mean they're okay. I feel like they are much the same as their old world, where I was like, nah, I don't know why I'd use these guys. And I still feel like it's kind of actually the same story. Like, yeah, they're decent. I mean, certainly they're not the complete and total worthless garbage they used to be. Which is, I know we're not doing hard comparisons, but seriously, these guys are the worst troops in the world.
But they're better. They're better.
They are better. They could have a purpose in the army. They can, run and charge, which is nice. I just don't see much of the purpose with them. That extra wound, again, if you're operating under if you're just playing sort of a funsies game and whatever, fine. But if you have any kind of limited unit selection or compact, these guys aren't pulling their weight.
I'll tell you where it comes into play. If you've got a Tomb King's army and you happen to have them, they are not worthless to field. There's no point structure. So you don't have to worry that, I'm going to pick something else. If it's a comp environment, like you said, if there's choices you really need to make, and you have a really good, deep selection of Tomb Kings in your army, then these are probably going to be the ones that you're going to discharge first. Or you're going to look over. But I think that they still have a use. They're not going to be a waste if they're on the battlefield. Personally, I think that they're the kind of unit that you're not going to look at and respect. You're going to go look at other things that seem like more of a threat, and these guys are going to shock you, like coming up on your flank or swooping around the side. They can move very far with that run and charge ability and a base 12 move.
Sure.
Okay, horse archers.
Yeah, I like these much better. I did before.
Anything that can shoot.
Well, it's not just that. Yes, certainly, but even so. They've got the shoot and run thing, which again is great. If you thought the regular archers doing it was good, how about 12 plus a d6 and still shooting behind you? I mean, these guys are never going to get caught if you don't want them to. And the Angry Desert Wind is so amazing. They can shoot instead of moving in the move phase, and then move instead of shooting in the same turn.
Nice.
So, and if it moves, it's just. If it moves in the shooting phase, it can retreat. So they can actually, if they do get caught in combat, they can shoot in the movement phase, right? Go to shooting, still pre-combat, where the other enemy hasn't attacked them yet, and run away.
Love it.
So, I mean, these guys are very hard to pin down. I absolutely love these dudes. Just because they're a great harassment unit. They have a purpose. They should be around the edges, just putting arrows at sensitive targets.
Yeah, really going after war machines or wizards and stuff. They have the ability to do that. And if they if you pay attention to them, they're gonna get out of dodge. I like.
Yeah, if the enemy doesn't have ranged weapons, they're never taking these guys out. You're not catching these guys in melee.
All right, skeleton chariots. Yes, 10-inch move, 5 wounds apiece. I'm a little surprised the 5 wounds. A lot of chariots I've seen have 6 wounds. But still, we're talking about a lot longer range than what we saw in 8th edition, where it was limited to 8 inches with no marching. That does not exist anymore. While you do have some slow moving with the overall Tomb Kings, the skeleton chariots seem to have gained a little bit of speed. I think they added another gear, which I like. In terms of their capability. Again, you can return a slain model. Only one, though, because of your icon bearer, which is nice. Again, you have the minimum in terms of what you can charge in range. You have the bow ability, so this is a shooting unit as well as a unit that can charge in and do some damage. And let's be honest, if you have 5 of these or 3 or 5 of these in a unit, yeah, you might have some trouble getting all of them in certain situations, especially as there's clusters of combat. But still, you're going to get some in. You're going to have a lot of attacks here, and you can still shoot. So you're acting in more than one phase. And Crush Between Our Wheels, they double the number of attacks they make with all their melee weapons if they charged. So that's a lot. That adds up. That's a lot of attacks. So now we're talking, instead of just spears at 2 and the hooves at 4, now we're talking about 12 attacks. And with the skeleton keyword, they're going to get again the bonus of all those synergies with pluses and rerolls and whatnot. I think they're still just as ugly in Moss as they used to be.
Agreed.
All right, buddy. You get the Tomb Guard.
Sure. These guys are amazing. All right. Tomb Guard. First off, forget the halberd exists. You want the blade. Okay. So, like, there you go. And why? I've seen a lot of people say 3-up, 4-up, and 4-up, 3-up. It's the same thing. It's not. That is not the same thing. A lower to hit is always better. Because math, but to very quickly explain it, you never get to make the wound roll if you don't hit. Okay? So, although those are the same numbers inverted, the more you hit, the more wound rolls you get to roll.
Mm-hmm.
So, hence, you know, yeah, I mean, and it's easy. It's hard to conceptualize like this, but if I told you a unit was 1-up, 6-up, or 6-up, 1-up, which one would you take? Right? Obviously.
Yes, I want more. I want more options. More the odds in my favor for hits.
Right, at least the chance to hit, and then get more 6s. Okay. So, at any rate, cursed weapons. These guys are great. So yeah, good hit, 2 attacks each, fantastic. 3 to hit, 4 to wound. They pack rend, always good for 1 wound troops. Yeah, they only do 1 damage, but whenever they roll a 6, boom, double damage. They can do the shield fortress thing, which most of the Tomb Guard, everybody who carries tomb shields can do that, which it's fine, whatever. If you know you're going to get charged and there's no way around it, okay. Or, you know, if it doesn't make sense for you to charge them because it's going to break up your battle line, it's not a bad choice. But to me, these guys are great simply because these guys are offensive, just little beat sticks. They put out a ton of pain at a high rend and can very often be doing 2 damage.
You know, I think it's pretty interesting when you said that don't bother with the halberds, and it's the same thing with the Grave Guard and the Vampire Counts. I made up a whole bunch of converted like dismounted questing knights for my Bretonnian themed Vampire Counts, and they were much more appropriate as in Grave Guard, just like the Tomb Guard. I think also where many people use them with their halberds over a shield and a weapon in 8th edition. Now it seems it's much more appropriate for the better save and for the double wounds if you roll high enough to take them with the sword and board, and that just means some different modeling, some making some new conversions for me, but it changes the dynamic of the unit. You want to get that better saves first of all, but you get a mechanic that makes you that really benefits you as opposed to just maybe a higher to wound roll on the back end. So I agree 100%. I love these, and I love how they look. I absolutely love how they look.
By the way, I got to give you the 15-minute warning for me.
So, we're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to move. Okay, Necrotech, really quickly. Not the top choice for a hero. It's nice that you can get the extra move. It'll help you get a more mobile army. So that's cool. But if you have room to spare and if you want to throw an extra hero on the table, it will help. But not the thing that I would default to unless you really have a mobile mechanic that you want to exploit. All right, so let's go to Necropolis Knights.
Yeah, one quick thing on the Necrotech. He's worthless on his own. Only in the combination with the later War Machines will we see any value out of him.
Got it. Hopefully we'll get to that. Yeah. And by the way, to our viewers, if Vince has to take off because of another obligation, I'm going to keep going through the tail end and finish up the units. Okay, so Necropolis Knights.
Incredible. These dudes are BA. They wreck enemies. Oh my God, they're so wonderful. The big spear, 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, neg 1 rend and 1 damage. Just pumping out attacks with good hit, wound, and rend. The poison fangs off the serpent. Woo! You gotta love it. 3 attacks, 4s, 3s, neg 1, and D3 damage. That is tasty. Never mind the fact that if the snakes roll a 6 to wound, then they do an additional mortal wound. So just even more mortal wounding. And if they've got the shields, then they go to 4-up in the combat phase. Amazing. And the fact that they have the icon bearer that returns 1 whole snake every round. Yes.
Yeah, that's big. I love that. That's a mechanic that's similar in a lot of the vampire counts as well.
Oh, one more quick note on them. They are both reanimates and skeletons, meaning that everything buffs them.
Yeah, so you're going to take them in multiple themes if you build along theme lines. Yes, I love that you can make multiple themes in all of these armies. All right, Tomb Scorpions. All right, you know what? I wouldn't have taken these really that much in the previous edition. Now you can have any number. I think you only could take. Am I correct? You only could take one in 8th edition.
No, you'd have more. Just nobody ever took more than one.
Okay. Well, maybe that's why. Okay. Entombed Beneath the Sands. There's really no detriment to it anymore, which I like. This is one of those units that's going to work with the Necrotect because if you're within 18 inches, you can ignore on a 5+ mortal wounds. So there's some synergy just with this unit and others that we're going to see with the Necrotect. The reanimate Tomb Scorpions. So you can actually add this is different than just summoning a Tomb Scorpion. This is where you can grow a unit, and I like that. I really like that ability because if I start off with say 2 or 3, or even just 1, if you ignore this spell and you feel the option to unbind it over others, and you feel that others are more dangerous, this is where the Tomb Scorpions can start really becoming a little mini horde that they weren't when they first started.
Yep. Only other quick note on them: these guys have the Entomb Beneath the Sands burrow off screen, and they only have to come up 6 inches away from an enemy instead of the normal 9, which makes it an easy charge.
Yep, they don't have the Hornblower to make it a minimum 6-inch, but they do. That's still going to be a near gimme. Yep. All right, I know you love Euroshopti.
These guys are these dudes are wrecking balls now. So I knew that investment in Euroshopti would pay off. The great bows are worth everything that they say. I always take them with the great bows. That it's just too useful, in my opinion, because you get these very powerful shots out of them at -1 rend and D3 damage. You got a monster coming across the table at you, and you got a bunch of Ushopti. That thing is going to be messed up by the time it gets to you. And as well in melee, if you get them in melee with weaker troops, their save goes to 3-up. Because against anything with a damage characteristic of 1, they have a 3-up save. So very, very, very powerful. Again, they have this Necrotect benefit, which is like meh. But just like the Tomb Scorpion, they've got the reanimate thing where your Death Wizards can actually add to the unit. So to me, and adding more dudes with ray bows, thumbs up.
Yeah, nice range. I think the range is amazing. It's one of the longer ranges we've seen with just missile troops, not war machines. All right, let's go to the War Sphinx. You can take the War Sphinxes. I know this is your baby. So let's start with the Chimerian.
Yeah, so this thing is just a monster and a half. Obviously, it has its old fiery roar, 12 wounds, standard. It's not super fast, but the old move is 6, but whatever, that's fine. Its save got better, so hey, how about that? But the fiery roar, 1 attack, 3 to hit, 2 to wound if it's the thing's unwounded, rend -1 and damage D6. So it spits out a short range cannonball, which is nice. Just as far as the actual attacks go, you have to choose the tail. And I actually much favor the Venom Spike tail. I favor the 1 attack hitting on a lower number, but with the -2 rend and the D3. I think the claws and the Tomb Guard spears, like when this thing's unwounded, the Tomb Guard spears pump out 8 attacks. This thing doesn't need more attacks. It needs the rend and damage. And so that's what the Spike tail provides. And then it has this wonderful Sacred War statue ability that both this and the Necrosphinx have, that it halves any wounds or mortal wounds inflicted on a War Sphinx, rounding fractions up. So every insane. 1 is still 1, but 2 is 1, and 3, it's just like, it's so good.
It's like 16 wounds instead.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
And it heals.
Yes, and your wizards can put it back together. One of the few easy to heal big monsters. So yeah, I really love this thing. And its Thunder Crush is also fantastic. When it charges, if it charges into any kind of real unit, it's almost an automatic D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah, it's sweet. I was going to convert one during end times, and I kind of put it on hold. I think I'm going to have to go and convert one now.
Yeah, they were great before, still great now.
Yeah. All right, the Royal War Sphinx.
Yeah, so this is basically the same thing. This is just, it's got the a Tomb King on the top, right? Instead.
Why not?
And, sure. And I won't tarry too long on the Tomb Kings. His glaive is very solid. A lot of attacks, good rend, good damage. I mean, 3 damage apiece out of 3 attacks with a rend of -2. I mean, oh, good God. Don't get near that thing. But I think what I want to talk about here that's really different is his command ability. Since he's the Tomb King, he gets a new command ability. And I think that is a really potent ability. He gets to point someone out and say, like, how dare you disturb me? But he picks an enemy. And until your next hero phase, you get to add 1 to wound rolls for basically everybody. Everybody. Like, his Mummy and Death Rattle is going to cover pretty much everything in the army. Against that chosen unit. So it's perfect. He's pointing like marker lights, right? that just I mean, +1 to wound is such a huge deal for everything that targets them. Melee, shooting, whatever.
Dust pheromones.
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful command ability.
Can you say sudden death?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. In a sudden death situation, this guy points at the target and is like, or the unit or whatever, and says, yeah, kill that thing, and then you do.
Yeah, it just makes me think of the Mummy movie, which I'm sure you hated. Just the point and the big the jaw coming down and the big roar. Yeah,
absolutely.
Something along those lines. Okay, Necrosphinx. I'm gonna let you keep going here, buddy, because if you have to take off, you might as well get as many hits.
I have 6 minutes. That's fine. I appreciate that. This thing is a god-awful monster. Fear this thing, O ye who play against the Tomb Kings. This was garbage in the last edition, and now it will make paste of everything. I had a full, 6 demogryphs charge this thing in the rear, and it turned around and eliminated that unit like it laughed. It was a joke. That would not have happened in the old world. Obviously, it can fly. So it's got a nice long move, assuming it's unwounded. That is on the variable wound chart, but it still can fly pretty far. It has old style Swift Stride, which is super sweet, with that need to destroy, however, it's compulsed to charge. Has the standard half wound things. Has the most ridiculous decapitating strike, which is if it ever rolls 2 6s to wound against a marker, against a monster, 10 mortal wounds. 10. 10 mortal wounds. See you later, monster. I mean, it kills a monster of 12 wounds instantly, right? Because it rolled 2 6s, which certainly wounded, plus 10, dead monster. It chops its head off.
Nice.
Not to mention the giant scything blades are just out and out ridiculous. If this thing's unwounded and it gets into you, it's got 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, with a -3 rend. So it's going to slice the armor off of most everything and does 3 damage per hit. Yeah, that thing's a monster.
I'm going to have to do a conversion on this one, too. And this was a gorgeous looking model, by the way, but most people went with the War Sphinx because it was just a better thing in the previous edition. Now, those people who made a Necro Sphinx, I'm sure, are pretty happy about that.
I'm happy. I've used this thing in almost every game.
All right. I love the Stalkers. Let's keep going, man, because I know you only got a couple minutes.
Okay. So the Stalkers, their gaze has a little longer range, which is nice. You can set them up off camera, as it were, right? And you can add to them because they're reanimates. I think what's cool about them is the way their gaze works now. So on a 1, they stare at themselves. They do a mortal wound. Much better than the old world, which had the same statistical likelihood to happen, but they did D3 wounds to themselves. Ugh.
Yeah.
In this case, on a 2 or 3, nothing happens. On a 4 or 5, single mortal wound. On a 6, D3 mortal wounds. A couple of these guys can really do some crazy good damage when they stare at something.
Yeah, end times I used to like the idea of summoning these guys and then they would still be able to shoot. You can still do that, but here's the limitation. Underground Stalkers, you can come up within 9 inches. The range is 10. So that still works. But if you summon them, they have to be summoned within let's see, it's 18 inches of the caster. It does not say anything about summoning with a minimum range. Reanimate Stalker. I'm a little surprised about that.
I mean, you're just adding to the unit. You're not summoning them. It's another one of those just add to the
Okay, so that, yeah, I didn't read the last line there. Okay,
The
good.
completely controversial list summoning, because it just adds to existing unit. These are clean and clear.
Yes. Okay, so you don't have to worry about. Yeah, yeah. Okay, gotcha. My mistake. Well, that's why we have you on, man.
I'm here to help.
All right. Final words before I go and continue on with the Bone Giant. Is there anything specifically that that we may be about to cover that you want to make a comment about, or in general about the Tomb Kings before you have to go? And just to the viewers, stick around because I'm going to keep going through these war scrolls even after Vince is gone until I finish them.
Yeah, I feel like I got you most of the way through, so that feels good.
Yep. Thank you.
No problem. I apologize. I had a limited time today. I will say the Screaming Skull Catapult is fun. That's where you're going to see the Necrotect payoff. And I think the Screaming Skull Catapult has one of the most powerful, subtle abilities in the game with the Bravery knock.
Yeah.
Firing that thing at the right target and cracking Bravery when you know that unit's going to take the target's going to take Battle Shock can easily be the difference between winning and losing a combat, because 2 Bravery is so big.
Especially
by the way,
with high wound count models. Yeah.
Yes. Also consider the fact that the way it lowers their Bravery, okay, consider that with all the other Bravery testing things in the army, such as the Casket.
Cool. Hey, thank you, Vince. Again, stick with us, viewers. We're going to keep going. We're going to do more of this stuff. I want to do another hangout with you, Vince. That's not an army unlocking, just more conceptual, maybe some tactics or something about balance and whatever. We'll talk about it and go over some Age of Sigmar stuff. And I'm looking forward to your show. Not only, first of all, I should open with this, by the way, but I don't know if there's many viewers of mine that are not viewers of Vince and Warhammer Weekly, but tune into Warhammer Weekly Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then also periodically on Friday at 9. Am I correct?
Yeah, this Friday at 9 will be episode 2 of War Games.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. All right, buddy. Thanks again, and have a great day. And we're going to keep going for the rest of you who are going to stick around.
Sounds good. A pleasure as always, and Mitch, I'm around anytime you need me.
I'll be calling you. I'll be calling you from the bullpen.
I look forward to it, sir. Have a great one.
Bye, buddy. Okay, let's go with the Bone Giant. All right, so if you're still with us, we're going to keep going through the scrolls. And if you're tuning in later, thank you for tuning in. Bone Giant. So, the Bone Giant it was a cool model. I hear rumors that they're going to be issuing a new sculpt for this. But again, those are only rumors. Once they're substantiated, we'll talk more about it. 9 wounds, decent 6 moo, especially for a large creature. It's definitely going to be the kind of thing where people are going to have to make choices of whether they want to go after it. The Unstoppable Assault. So on a hit roll of 6 or more, because you're going to get bonuses, you make an extra attack. So, let's take a look, first of all, at some of the other stats. You've got the Gigantic Blades, 2-inch range, not bad. So 3 attacks, 4 up, 3 up, -2 rend is a key thing. So it's a longer range. You can sit this behind 1 row of enemy units and just reach over those guys. And with a nice respectable rend, you've got 3 damage per shot. You're going to get some of these in, and that 3 damage after the save is failed is going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. Heavy Footfalls, you got 4 of those. Same thing, 4 up, 3 up. A respectable -1 rend and just a 1 damage, so it can add on, but still a good number of attacks for this model. So if you roll those 6s, when you roll the hit, getting those extra attacks with that weapon is not a small deal. You have a good chance of rolling at least 1 6 for at least one of those 2. All right, so Colossus of War. After a Bone Giant is attacked in combat for the first time, roll a dice. Add to the result if a Necrotect, see another synergy that we're seeing, is within 18 inches. On a 5 or more, the Bone Giant can immediately pile an attack for a second time that turn. That is crazy. With all those attacks, with as much as you have here, obviously, again, a respectable 6-inch. Once you get within range, where you can do a pile-in. If you've done an attack, now you have a chance to do another one. That can be brutal. So not a bad save with a 4-up save either. So you throw up a Mystic Shield on this thing, a 3-up. It's going to have a good chance of making it into your enemy by turn 2, if not countercharging after your opponent closes. Okay, Reanimate Wrath. As the wizard imbues an ancient mantra of the spirits of vengeful gods, imbue this war construct with terrible strength. Reanimate has a casting value of 5, very low. Pick a bone giant with 18 inches. You can reroll failed to hit rolls until until the model's next hero phase. Again, all those extra mechanics mean not only you're going to get attacks, you have chances to get extra attacks. You have chances to get a whole extra round of attacks. And now you have the ability, if you know this guy is in combat, in your hero phase, you can have him re-roll to hits. Oh, God, this thing can do some serious hurt. It's going to add up. It's the volume of attacks that they can put out. The Screaming Skull. Now, everybody who plays Tomb Kings loves the Screaming Skull or hates it because it used to be where it was like you either worked or you never didn't. I have 2 of them. I have the old school metal ones. I'm making up a new version of them with a conversion that's going to make it a little more ethereal, Tomb King, actually, Vampire County. Because I like converting it, I'm a little insane that way. But this is a strong and powerful and scary, scary unit. First of all, excuse me, that 6 to 36 inch range, very respectable. That 6 inch minimum, think about that, guys. That is very important. A lot of war machines, not all, but if you get close enough, they can't shoot you. And then you get into range, you start killing its crew, and it starts diminishing. So the number of skulls that it shoots per attack diminishes if you start killing off its crew. So if you look at the table below, first of all, it has a nice little move, so you can move 4 inches if you have a full crew. Always great for repositioning, trying to get a bead around a target. Maybe if it's around cover and you can't see something, or blocking line of sight. So you can get 4 skulls for each of these attacks. So the way it works is you have your 1 attack, and you roll the hit, you roll the wound, you roll the armor save. If it fails, that's how many skulls hit. That's basically how many wounds. If you're near a necrotect, the necrotect is within 1 inch, you get to shoot twice. That is also monstrous. And every time you do, you're attacked by the Screaming Skull. All right. And it says a unit that is attacked by a Screaming Skull, not if it's wounded, it's attacked. It'll lose 2 off its bravery until the next Battle Shock phase. So until the end of the next Battle Shock phase. So it's still going to apply to that turn's Battle Shock. That's killer. It's fantastic. Again, you find if you're going to even do a couple of wounds, 1 wound even to a high value target, let's say a monstrous cav or a cav unit or a monstrous infantry unit that has lots of wounds but very few models, and you can force a Battle Shock test because you know it's not immune because no command ability or other special ability has been applied to it. Now you know that that's going to happen, or you have a pretty good chance that that's going to happen. You can reduce that bravery, and you have a greater chance of now removing whole models with lots of wounds as a result, piling on. A great mechanic, and the fact that the necrotect is there, that's why you take a necrotect. Also, you have a ability where you can lob the Screaming Skull catapult at targets that are not visible to it. So with some things you have to have line of sight, but a lot of these rock lobas, I saw this also with the trebuchet for the Bretonians, you don't have to have line of sight. Somebody can be hiding behind a building or behind a hill, and you can't see them. You still can target them with this. So this is going to be your character sniper. This is going to be, maybe some of the monsters that are hiding that you want to try and, either behind large terrain pieces, or any high value targets that you want. You don't have to worry about LOS. You can restore the crew if they've been damaged. So there's a spell that if you've lost, even if you lost all the crew members, you can now, it doesn't immediately, you don't immediately lose the model. The actual crew themselves have their own wounds. They can actually move, as long as they stay within range of the war machine, they can still, you can still shoot it in the shooting phase, but they can go out and attack and kind of screen a little bit the actual skull catapult itself. But if you lose them, you can restore them, and that's pretty cool as well. So definitely worth taking 2 if you can if you've got them. And I will be definitely fielding them, and I will be showcasing the ones that I'm making at some point. We also have Carrion. Okay, so moving on to Carrion. These are fantastic screeners. They really are beefy with the 3 wounds apiece, 12 wounds. Vince, who was just on, loves these guys. I have a bunch that I converted into Fellbats, but I can also still use them as Carrion, which I definitely plan to in different games. 4 attacks each. Not such a big deal when it comes to its to hit. 3 was very respectable for wounding. No rend and 1 damage, but 4 attacks. 4 attacks, that's not such a bad deal, okay? They circling from high above. As they remain high in the sky, they cannot be charged, attacked, targeted by spells. So you can really pick and choose when you want to put these guys into the battlefield. This is one of the few kind of fly high type mechanics I've seen in the game so far. All right, so when carrying, the first time a unit of carrion charges, you roll 3 dice instead of 2 and to see how far it charges. All right, you declare your charges within 18 inches. As they charge, they are assumed to drop down to low level, and the circling high ability no longer applies. So you can just have these guys kind of just sitting around waiting for when you want them to be in battle, and then you have this massive charge range. They're going to get where they need to go, specifically against high-value targets. And then you have the ability to summon additional ones. A unit of 3 within 18 inches of the caster, 9 away from the enemy. This is the summon mechanic that kicks in one if you have one on the battlefield. It gives it to the death casters. So not a bad unit. Absolutely, I definitely would take them in units of 3. Obviously, if you don't have any kind of limitations on the number of wounds in a unit with over zealous comp rules, take as many as you want. But the idea that you can summon additional ones of 3, a unit of 3 is no slouch and will definitely be your war machine or hero hunting. Tomb Swarms. Excuse me. Now, they don't have any save to speak of. But there is some great stuff for swarms in Age of Sigmar. 5 wounds a pop. You can take a bunch of them, but you don't have to start off with a bunch of them, just so you know. All right, so they have the Entomb Between the Sands type ability. Instead of setting them up in the battlefield, they're beneath the sand. You can then bring them out within 9 inches of enemy models further into the game. Then it says here, if it does remove the unit from the battlefield, if the unit can burrow back underground for future movement. So basically, you can, unlike some other mechanics where you can kind of bring in a unit that you've declared that you're deploying, but it's off board at the early part of the game. That's how I see that working. It's not just whatever's in your figure chest or on your shelf. You have to declare that this is being deployed, but because it has that off-table mechanic, you put it to the side of the board and then bring it on. You don't have your whole your own collection available for this type of stuff, unless it has a special ability, and then you declare it as part of your deployment. It has that ability to then go back underneath the sands, which we haven't seen much of. If a unit of swarms burrows underneath, as described above, it is joined by its scuttling brethren who have remained hidden. Die 3 slain models. 5 wounds each are returned to this unit. So anytime they get really kind of beat up, if you have a bunch of these, or even if if one you lose one, you can just go underneath and you have a good chance of restoring this to its full value of that you started with, or basically if it's wounded, it's coming. Not if it's wounded, if it's destroyed, if you had 3 of them, you can now come back up with 3 more if you're down to 1. So always try to do that unless you have a real good reason. I'm going to go real quickly. I'm going to finish off rather, not quickly, with the formations. Now, the formations are kind of that special sauce for each of these armies. Some of them are not so great. I think he's got some really good ones here for the Tomb Kings. I think they made out fairly well, especially this Chariot one. So this is where you take, as you have, it could be your whole entire force, or as part of a larger force. You have to fulfill the requirements for this formation. If you do, you get these special rules. So in this case, you have 1 Tomb King that's in a royal chariot, and then 4 units of chariots. So you're definitely going chariot heavy here, which makes sense. The Pride of Nehekara. The fighting quality of the Tomb King's Royal Legion of Chariots is a reflection of his own power and martial prowess. One of the finest steeds and the most mobile warriors fight in such an elite brigade. You add 1 to all to hit rolls for skeleton chariots that are part of the Royal Legion of Chariots. This is stackable with all of the other abilities that potentially can add +1s to hit, or additional rerolls or whatnot. That's what makes these types of formations so incredible. You're going to be hitting on 3s or 2s. That adds up, especially with the multitude of attacks you get with chariots. Then bone-crunching impact. The chariots of this legion impact with devastating force, wave after wave of war-crushing machines. War machines crushing bodies beneath heavy wheels. Roll dice after a model from the Royal Legion of Chariots completes its charge move within 1 inch of a unit. On a 4 or more, the unit suffers a mortal wound. I see a lot of this with chariot mechanics or monster cab mechanics. This is a bonus, and the fact that it's a mortal wound. You absolutely cannot discount that fact. You're going to have 4 units of chariots, and this could be your entire army. And you're going to have the ability, you're of course going to be within a 1 inch of an enemy. It's just a matter of how many of your enemy. So now you're gonna start rolling to see if that unit takes not just a wound on top of whatever else you're doing, but a mortal wound. So you're almost guaranteed to get, to start doing some casualties, and it's just going to add up. If you like chariots, if you like the Tomb King's chariot army, this is the one that you want to take as the core of either the basis of an entire army that you're fielding, or as the core of a larger army. So let's go to the Tomb King's Tomb Legion. All right, this is a big one. You're going to be deploying a lot of your army, and this is one of the things I don't like necessarily about some of these formations. It doesn't really help you. If you're going to put all this stuff down, yes, you should get some benefits, but it's probably going to be the majority of your army, if not your entire collection. I saw that with Bretonnians, where it was like, yeah, okay, so I'm getting something out of it, but I'm going to have this is it. I'm not really getting any creativity here. All right, so you have to have a Tomb King, a Lich Priest, 2 units of Skeletal Warriors, and if they get the best bonus, you want to have more than 30, preferably 40, so you have a little bit of buffer. We're talking a lot of wounds here, so if you have any kind of comp for wounds, this is going to really limit you. Do not overcomp wounds and stuff in this if you're a TO, please, because that really hurts some of these units. I cannot stress this enough, that some of these, like they used to be bottom feeder or garbage units, now have the potential to do something with more wounds. If you have to, use a mechanic to combine war scrolls with limited war scrolls to give people choices. You could add more wounds to units and stuff. I'll talk about that in another video. All right, 2 units of Skeletal Archers. Skeletal Archers are really good. Unit of Tomb Guard. 1 unit of Skeletal Chariots, Horsemen, Horse Archers, or Knights. That's an army. That's an entire army. That is a nearly, if not absolutely, a 8th edition 2.5K sized army. What might you add to that? I don't know if you need to add anything. Maybe some skull catapults or some other entombed beneath the sands type units. But you don't even need them. This is got a lot. There's a lot to it. What do you get for it? All right, you get if you roll wounds of 6 or more in the combat phase for a model in the Tomb Legion's unit, and it is within 18 inches of the Tomb King, you can immediately make 1 extra attack with the same weapon. Now let's think about this. A lot of these units have multiple weapons. All right. So for instance, you have Skeletal Warriors. They don't have multiple weapons, but they have multiple attacks. Now those 3 attacks per can become 4 attacks. You have chariots that have several different weapons. You have the horses and the guys that are on top. You have the horsemen, same thing. So you have multiple weapon types. So they'll get the benefit of this twice. That's huge. That's a lot of attacks that you're going to get within 18 inches of the Tomb King. The Hierophant's duty. A Tomb Legion's Lich Priest is known by the title Hierophant and is responsibility to awaken the warrior souls and restore the fallen bodies. Roll a dice if a model is a Tomb Legion. Roll a dice if a model in a Tomb Legion is slain within 18 inches of the Lich Priest. On a 6, he immediately resurrects the warrior, and the wound or mortal wound that caused the model to be slain is ignored. This is like a ward save, a 6-up ward save. So essentially, this entire army, if it's within 18 inches of the Lich Priest, gets the ability to ignore any wound, any death blow on a 6-up that kills that model. That's huge, especially if you have large volumes and you're losing things potentially to battle shock. So yeah, if you want your entire force in a fairly mid to large sized army to be this type of a force, and this is what you want to field, you get some really nice things. But it's a lot of models to have to put on the table. You're going to be playing a fairly decent sized game. You're not going to be playing a small sized game. Not to say that the chariot army is not going to be big. I mean, you could have 3 chariots in each of these 4 units. We're still talking 12 chariots, as well as the Tomb King. You bolster that with maybe a Lich Priest or a couple other units. That's a pretty decent sized army, but you have a little more flexibility. This Tomb Legion means you're going to be putting lots of models on the table. It's going to be a longer game, because Age of Sigmar is a lot faster than 8th edition was. So overall, Tomb Kings look much stronger. They look much better than they did if we compared to the 8th edition version. In summation, I think that they've improved in comparison and power level to other armies. They have definitely much, much more mobility. That is absolutely key. They were a very slow army. They were like a static army that shot and did a lot of stuff in the magic phase. Now they can summon, they can move, they can retreat, they can shoot. They have real good mechanics to get into a fight, stick in there, do some serious damage. They really are an facets of the game, where in previous editions, specifically 8th edition, they kind of were limited, where they really couldn't really enjoy all parts of the game, especially the mobile aspect of the game. Now they are a very mobile army, and obviously very flavorful. And I can't wait to see if there's anything that's going to be added with new units down the road. Their synergies with vampire counts cannot be underestimated. There are so many synergies because so much of the skeleton aspect and death rattle aspect that benefits you in this army also benefits vampire counts. And you can take combinations just like you could with the undead legions aspect. And we'll go over that at some other point. Once I actually do the vampire counts, I'm actually going to go and do another video at some point where I'm going to talk about how these units, these armies combine. That is the next wave of unlockings I'm going to be doing. After I get through all the individual war scrolls for all the individual armies, then I'm going to start looking at the factions, order, chaos, destruction, death, and see how those combine. Now, I want to just end this real quickly on one other note. I had a Beastman unlocking that I had done earlier in the week with Remington Steel, and it got kind of corrupted on YouTube. All of the live hangouts from Sunday or Monday this past week were kind of ruined. It was restored after it was in processing hell. This is across the board in all the tech forums on YouTube. A lot of people suffered from this. When it was restored, it lost. First, it went down from like 2+ hours. Sorry for that being that long, but Remy and I just had a blast. And then when it was restored, it was down to like 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then it went down to 20 minutes. So if you're watching it, just understand it's not the full one. We're either going to see if it can still be restored, or we're going to do it again. I already spoke to Remy, and he said that he will. So we'll probably be doing a reissue of the Beastman tonight. If you're still with me, tonight I have Kieran Dunleavy as my special guest. We're going to be unlocking High Elves, and we're going to be talking about the absolute crazy cray-cray that is High Elves, just like it was in 8th edition, still is in Age of Sigmar. Not Banner of the World Dragon crazy, but a lot of other crazy. So tune in for that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day.